This is Vigilant Liberty Radio News from Independent Journal Review for January 7th. Former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell has been sentenced to 2 years in prison on corruption charges. The prosecution sought a 10-year sentence, but after requests by associates and family of McDonnell, the judge issued the 2-year sentence instead. During his time as Virginia's governor, McDonnell and wife reportedly received bribes including a $6,500 Rolex, designer clothing worth $20,000, and free vacations. In exchange for these gifts, McDonnell promoted materials made by a company called Star Scientific Incorporated. McDonnell and his wife are scheduled to report to prison in February, but McDonnell plans to appeal his conviction. John Boehner was re-elected Speaker of the House for a third term after facing a rare divided vote in the House of Representatives. The last time this many people voted against a majority-party Speaker nominee was in 1860, when Republicans split their vote between John Sherman of Ohio and Galusha Grow of Pennsylvania. Boehner's victory comes after reports he would retaliate against anyone who moved against his re-election. A total of 24 members of the House voted against Boehner, but Boehner still received 216 votes. Senators Chuck Grassley and Patrick Leahy have written a letter to the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security questioning the FBI's use of stingrays and the scope of exceptions in FBI policy. That policy requires the FBI obtain a warrant before using a cell site simulator or fake cell phone tower, commonly known as a stingray. However, the policy has several exemptions, including cases that pose an imminent threat, cases involving a fugitive, or cases in which the technology is used in public places or where the FBI deems there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. Senators Grassley and Leahy question the scope of the exceptions in their letter. The FBI is not the only government agency using stingrays. The IRS, DEA, ICE, Secret Service, and local police departments have purchased the devices, leading some states and cities to ban their use without a warrant. After a new law in California allowed an estimated 1.5 million illegal immigrants to apply for driver's license effective January 1st, officials in Sacramento are now concerned these new drivers will be lacking auto insurance. This has led the state to open up the decade-old California Low-Cost Auto Insurance Program, or CLCA. This allows drivers to purchase insurance through the state. Auto insurance is required by California law for anyone who owns a vehicle. Advocates argue the plan will help reduce financial risk and insurance costs for all drivers. Critics say the CLCA program has not convinced uninsured drivers to obtain insurance and that the rate of uninsured motorists has held steady for the past 10 years. It is estimated approximately 4.1 million drivers in California do not have auto insurance. This is Amy Curtis with your Vigilant Liberty Radio News from Independent Journal Review for January 7th.
VLR.
This show is produced by IJReview.com.
This show is copyright by VLR Media. All opinions of panelists and guests are their own and may not reflect the opinion of VLR Media, the host, or anyone else.
Let's be clear. Now let's be clear. There are no winners here. Now let's be clear. Now let's be clear. Now let's be clear. There are no winners here.
Two minds are better than one. Time for the right mics with Mike Miller and Michael Hausum.
Well, welcome to the show. You are listening to The Right Mics with Mike Miller and Michael Hausum. We have a fun-filled, fact-filled, wit-filled show planned for you today. We've got approximately 7.5 hours worth of topics and insight and commentary prepared, which we are going to expertly boil down to 120 minutes. We've got Town Hall writer, editor, radio show host Michael Schaus is going to be on during the second hour. Between then, we're going to do our very best to provide you informative and entertaining commentary and thoughts. Mr. Miller,
Yes.
what's up, brother?
It's good, dude. I mean, it's 5 degrees when I woke up. It's going to be 5 below overnight. Wind chills, -30 to -40. Wind is blowing like hell. But listen, I always look at the bright side. You know that, and the sun is shining. So other than that, yeah, we're good to go here.
You know what, man? The sun is shining here. We've got a kind of a Santa Ana wind condition. Yesterday was, I think, 82 or 83. This morning, it was, well, when I was conscious of the weather, it was like 69. But, I mean, all is not perfect. I'm standing here looking out my window, and I can see a couple of wispy clouds overhead. So it's not perfectly blue sky, so I'm not totally happy.
So anyway, yeah.
Okay, so a couple things, man, we got to do. Number one, if folks want to call in, the number's 412-567-6879. We welcome your calls. We especially welcome your compliments and positive affirmations. You can follow us on Twitter. We will interact with you throughout the show at The Right Mics, M-I-C-S, the website, therightmics.us. Also, if you're listening on Spreaker, please subscribe to the channel. That helps us. We're trying to get things set up here so that we can be on iHeartRadio to expand our reach. And the greater the subscriptions on Spreaker, the quicker we get up. You know, Mike, one thing I realized as I'm sitting here this morning, I'm going through trying to figure out what we have not been doing right so far this year, these last, 2 shows.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually took me about an hour and a half to come up with one thing that we have not done right.
And that is what?
And that is, for the year, we have not yet stated our gender identification, our racial classification, nor our sexual preferences.
You're right, and as a result, that would mean that new listeners who are just joining the show have no idea, from whence we come as it relates to our views on things.
That's exactly right, because as you and I both are readily aware, and we've been very careful to do this, last year, is that there's no better way to understand every single position that someone might hold on any topic of any sort without first understanding what their gender identification is, racial classification, and sexual preference.
Exactly.
So, we have yet to do this. At some point, Mike, what we need to do is we need to just state those 3 items, and then we can just have clear air for 120 minutes, because everything we could possibly say would have already been said.
Exactly. And there's no better time to do that than now, which will be extremely helpful, again, to new listeners.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead, Mike? Take the bold step lead. What's your gender identification, racial classification, and sexual preference for the day?
Let's get the easy one to get out of the way. Obviously, is race. I am white as can be. Excuse me. I do have allergies today, folks. Again, now how's them? There was a period there of a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, while I was deep into watching The Voice, that I kind of wavered a little bit. You remember that?
I do. In fact, I've thought of almost nothing else but that.
See, so The Voice has been over for a while. So again, I am, not only, white has nothing to do with that part, but I am not only a proud male, but I am also proudly heterosexual. But I do warn you, American Idol starts tonight.
Whoa. Okay.
So what about you?
Wait, what's your gender identification? Oh, you did. You got that both. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's pretty simple for me. My gender identification for the day is male. My sexual preference is female, and my racial background is white.
Your racial background? You plan on that changing at any time in the future?
Well, I'm not sure. Are you allowed to racially identify like you are gender?
See, now that's a very interesting question. And as the words were leaving my lips, I'm thinking, everything else has happened. Why at some point can't someone, declare a change in their race? I mean, God knows that, during the the whole Trayvon Martin thing, the left, many on the left in the media, tried to portray George Zimmerman as a white Hispanic. So, dude, I think, today's age, anything's possible.
Well, here's the thing is, there's that TV show that would go back and it would trace, famous celebrities who their, either their surprising racial or cultural or relational heritage, Um, and the gotchas were always, somebody black had a white forebear, or somebody white had a black one, or a black had a white one, or something like.
Absolutely.
They would make some sort of connection historically, and I have never done anything like that. I mean, I know through my family name, the Hausum family emigrated from Bavaria in the mid 1800s, settled in Pennsylvania. So I know that. I know that my mom's great grandparents on her father's side emigrated from Scotland. But I mean, if you go back that family tree a short bit, who knows what's back up there? So,
dude, that is an excellent point. Jessica just read my mind, and she messaged me something that I was waiting to not interrupt you to say. But to your exact point, I mean, all we need do is look at Lizzie Warren, Michael. I mean, she is a Native American, and who knew? Who knew by looking at her? What does she say? She's 164th. I don't know, Navajo or whatever. But Pocahontas is, as you and a lot of people like to call her. I prefer Liawatha, but I think dude, you're exactly right.
Well, here's the thing: is if you were to stand and look at yourself, obviously she looked at herself in the mirror, and it's her high cheekbones that
That's
informed
right.
her. So maybe you can know where I'm about to go with my joke. If you're going to stand there and evaluate visually your physical characteristics and derive some sort of racial heritage.
Oh my. You know what? I bet even Watson calls himself, what does he call himself? Negroly challenged, or he calls us Negroly challenged, or whatever. Friend of the show and host of Battle for Freedom on our network. Watson, I mean, if he looks back, I mean, he may be able to, he probably doesn't know this. I think he may be listening. He normally does. But maybe Watson can go back to Ancestry.com or whatever, and he may be able to, if he gets after it, he may be actually declare himself as a white.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot of possibilities, but I think we're obviously spending a little bit of time on this here because we've been remiss for the past week or so in identifying it. But just again to clarify, the reason why stating your sexual orientation is so important is because it is a bold, courageous thing to do. It is bold and courageous to come out and state. Which gender you'd prefer to have sexual relations with.
Well, and not only is it bold and courageous, but it's completely imperative today because, as we've said, these are the three most critical factors by which you should be judged. And, after those, the rest pale in comparison.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, well, now that that's the case, we've put that out there. We need it. There's a ton of stuff to talk about, man. There is a ton of stuff going on to talk about.
There's absolutely is, and we need to start off. Excuse me, with the terrorist attack in Paris, dude. I mean, listen, it is what it is. It happens all the time. Shocked? No. I mean, maybe they are in France, but the bottom line is quickly here. Not the bottom line, but I'm just to kind of set it up for folks because I want to move on beyond what happened and focus a bit more on the typical liberal reaction here in this country. But Islamic terrorists shouting Allahu Akbar stormed the offices of a satirical magazine. The name escapes me. No, it's Charlie Hebdo. I'm sorry. In Paris. By the way, a police doorman or a policeman at the front immediately shot and killed. Anyway, 12 people killed, one of them in the street. And the crime committed against Islam by this satirical magazine was printing